Of all the RPGs released at the tail end of the PlayStation's dominance in the console gaming market, none have gone as underappreciated as The Legend of Dragoon. This was an RPG with great characters, an interesting story, and a super unique combat system that featured timed attacks rather than button mashing. In this video, I'll explain the history of The Legend of Dragoon's development, explain what makes the title so special, and let you know if it's still worth playing today. And I'll just be honest, after doing the research I did for this video, this one stands out in a lot of ways. But before I get into them, please like this video and subscribe to my channel for more retro gaming content and RPG reviews like this one. Believe it or not, development on The Legend of Dragoon began in 1996, which was long before some of the most iconic PlayStation RPGs like Final Fantasy VII and Xenogears were released. According to producer Shuhei Yoshida, the creation of the game was plagued with several roadblocks, including indecision on CGI cutscenes, extensive work on character designs, and state-of-the-art lighting effects. The result of all that was a game that wasn't released in North America until about 4 years after development began. Just like games like Final Fantasy VII and Star Ocean: The Second Story, The Legend of Dragoon uses pre-rendered backgrounds. However, it also uses realistic-looking 3D polygonal characters. Well, as realistic as the PlayStation could handle at that time anyway. If I had to compare it to another RPG on the platform, I'd say it looks most similar to Final Fantasy VIII, and I think it works pretty well. Because of technological advancements by that time, the scenic pre-rendered backgrounds are some of the best the PlayStation had to offer. In The Legend of Dragoon, you play as Dart, a man who embarks on a 5-year journey to hunt down a mysterious monster who killed his parents. His quest is interrupted by a giant dragon though, and he isn't nearly strong enough to fight the beast. He manages to escape only through the help of Rose, an elusive traveler. When he returns to his village of Celeste, he discovers that it's been completely burned, with many inhabitants killed and his childhood friend Shauna kidnapped. Completely stunned, Dart finds that this was the work of Sandora, the empire that has overtaken half the country of Serdio. He then vows to seek revenge and rescue his friend, and learns that he's the long-prophesied Chosen One that will bring light to the world of darkness. Alright, I'm just kidding about that last part, I made that up completely. But you would have believed me otherwise, right? Anyway, Dart and his friends discover the ability to transform into Dragoons, which plays a big role in the combat as well as the story. The tale at the heart of The Legend of Dragoon swirls around the ramifications of an 11,000-year-old war called the Dragon Campaign. The story is filled with political feuds, but it also contains a lot of emotional moments as well. Dart's interactions with many characters, especially Shauna and Haschel, develops these characters over time, and you really learn a lot as you go. There are also quite a few guest characters that join the party and help push the story forward, and that was a nice touch that brought me back to the days of Final Fantasy IV. There were a lot of things that unfold in a way that was genuinely surprising, and I was pleased to see that the game actually avoids some of the stereotypical pitfalls of other RPGs. In terms of the soundtrack, Japan Studio deliberately chose Dennis Martin, an American who had no experience making songs for video games. However, he did have experience composing for Japanese television series, and the developers thought his style would actually stick out for their RPG and make it more distinct. Martin also had the help of Japanese counterparts, and work on the sound was split between New York and Japan, which was extremely rare for 1999. I think the team generally succeeded in carving out their own style, and the score contains a lot of percussion, bass, and saxophones, all of which weren't used very often for RPGs. So if you want a soundtrack that fits into a fantasy genre, but doesn't sound exactly like Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest, I'd say this is the perfect one for you. You can have up to 3 characters in your party at one time, and battles in The Legend of Dragoon play out in a turn-based manner. However, the timed hit mechanic for regular attacks makes the combat experience more dynamic than any other PlayStation RPG I've played. When you attack, your character's animation is accompanied by a very unique looking crosshair of sorts. If you can time the attacks by hitting the X button again as the squares overlap, you do additional damage and create what's called an addition. As you level up, you get the opportunity to increase the number of additions that you get, and the timing gets a bit more challenging as well. If you time these additions correctly, the process will continue up to the max number. During the long additions, enemies have a chance to counter, so when the square turns red you need to press the circle button, otherwise your attack sequence will end and your character will take damage. The coolest part of this too is that each of your character's additions actually level up with continuous use, and each addition level raises the SP gain per attack as well as the damage per hit. And honestly, I think this is the best part of the gameplay. It gave your character a really cool progression mechanic outside of traditional levels. Beyond that, you can even unlock special additions that are secret if you level each of a character's additions to the max, and these are super game breaking. A great goal to strive for, especially for players that feel the urge to do everything. Beyond the dynamic addition system, there are also dragon spirits that allow your characters to transform into dragoons to unleash special abilities. In order to do this, you must expend SP, and once transformed you can use attack or magic, the latter of which requires MP. These have wildly different effects, which range from healing your party to dealing huge amounts of damage to all enemies. One thing I want to note too is that the guard command in this game is far more powerful than it is in most RPGs because its use recovers 10% of the hit points of the character using it. And I thought this was a really nice touch, especially because the game limits you to only 32 total items in your inventory. In other games, I almost never use defend because I'd rather be doing something else, but in this one it's actually worthwhile. But yeah, I think it's pretty safe to say that this title has developed a pretty substantial cult following of fans, largely due to its fun battle system. And that following still exists after all these years. Apparently, there is a sequel to Legend of Dragoon planned at one point, with work being done on a follow-up intended to be released on the PlayStation 2. However, this project never came to be. It ended up being cancelled for reasons that are murky, and those who worked on it were reassigned to other projects at Japan Studio. Despite all the good stuff, I have to admit there are a few things I don't like about The Legend of Dragoon though. For instance, it's almost impossible to level characters and additions that aren't in your 3-person party. That was a little annoying because it disincentivized you from changing the ones you begin with. But the thing I most dislike is the extremely lengthy Dragoon transformations and magic attacks. Some of them last over a minute long. You can shorten them a little bit through a menu option, but you can't skip them entirely, and that's a real drag. Overall though, The Legend of Dragoon is a great RPG and it comes highly recommended. Its best quality is its innovative battle system, which made timing and reflexes more important than any other RPG released prior, and really made it stand out at the time, I must say. It also had a pretty interesting story and characters as well. And besides all that, it has some of the best looking graphics of an RPG on the platform, especially the pre-rendered backgrounds and water effects. And sure, like I said earlier, I do think it has a few downsides, but it's a game that's really grown on me over time, and it holds up extremely well now. Let's hope it gets a remaster or a sequel someday. But what do you guys think about The Legend of Dragoon? Is it an overlooked classic or just a flop, and do you have any fun memories of it? Let me know in a comment below. Please like, subscribe, and click the bell for more retro gaming content. I want to give a big shout out to my Patreon patrons and YouTube members. Thank you so much for your support. If you want early access to the videos I produce and other perks like they receive, please consider supporting the channel by becoming a Patreon patron or via the YouTube Join feature.